So the title was actually about mindful learning technologies. So I'm not yet that mindful how I would like to be, but this might be a lifelong development. But I will talk a bit about human learning, a little bit about mindfulness, and a bit about seamless technologies and technology-enhanced learning. Um, Basically, two words about where I'm working. I work at the Center for Learning Sciences and Technologies at the Open Universiteit of the Netherlands. And this is basically a research lab. We do a lot of national and international research projects. I'm focused on mobile and ubiquitous learning. Recently, my background is psychology, but I also worked in engineering. So I really try to follow a multidisciplinary approach, interdisciplinary approach when I do research, and I hope you will find this back in my slides and my presentation. Okay. So, when I studied psychology, I focused on cognitive psychology, and I learned some things about human learning. One focus there, and unfortunately you cannot see the movie, but you have, I can tell you about this. I worked a lot about episodic memory. So humans try mostly to structure memories, to structure things you learn, either to bring them together with existing knowledge they have, existing structures, or structure new things into so-called episodes. And there's this term of episodic memory. And this has actually a lot to do with what new media enable, because especially with mobile media and embedded media, we have now the possibility to very easily record, document, collect media in a new way, in which actually humans do this since a long time before we had any kind of media, if you want. So talking about episodic memory, and humans structure their experiences often in episodes. Furthermore, their learning is embedded, of course, in a context. And there are lots of theories about this, about the social context, about the some things we work with are new works, for example, of Rose Luckin, of ecology of resources. So I think the main perspective we're taking at the moment onto these is like you have an ecology of resources available. And these are iPads in class, as you just discussed, but these are also traditional tools like blackboards, like whiteboards, like interactive whiteboards. So I think we're just moving towards a mix of traditional media, traditional methods, and we need to rethink the whole mix of this ecology. And when doing this, and this is more about the mindfulness of the designer, I think we need to think about the context in which humans do use these tools and media since years and since hundreds of years. As we have these classical structures, we need, I'm really voting for that we need to change these structures, but we also need to think about the way humans use these tools since years. We did quite some work on reflection. I had the opportunity also to work with one of the colleagues present, with Christian Glan, a bit on reflection. Some bottom lines I would say is like humans are lazy, they don't want to reflect. Some do, some people do, but often they don't, and they don't like to. So you have to be very sometimes tricky. You have to think about how you design technology to enable reflection, but it's certainly a core concept when we work on technology enhanced learning. And also again, and you will see this a bit later, like I think mobile tools and mobile media embedded in the real world offer a variety of new opportunities to enable reflection support. So what's about humans and technologies and adoption? I unfortunately cannot get feedback, or can I hear you? Can you yell? No, I don't hear anything. Okay. Um, yeah. Please turn on the microphone. My only back channel. I'm without feedback here.
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, so, do you know the meta study of John Hattie about learning technologies? Who knows it? Say yeah.
Yes, it's on.
Oh, wow. Okay, very good. So I think there's actually, of a lot of the technologies we have used in the classroom and for learning support, there is not a lot of real effect these technologies have. And this has, of course, to do also with the adoption of these technologies. But I think there are some technologies now coming up. I will shortly also talk a little bit about these who really have the potential to change this. And when you look at the the markets and the businesses that have really changed in the last 10 years, as music, for example, completely. And there are certain forecasts that the next real big sector to change is education, and we're seeing some of these changes popping up, I would say. So when we talk about technology enhanced learning and what is the role of learning, of technology for enabling better or more learning, normally I just use this simple triplet of technology, enhancement, and learning. So the three questions you should ask is like, what kind of technology? I'm mostly talking about mobile, seamless technology. We sing after the presentation, thanks for the tweet. Uh, Personalized and context-aware technologies, sensors, big data, learning analytics. These are the current topics we're looking at. And I think an important question is always you ask, what is the goal of using these technologies? Yeah, so some of the tweets before um, already said, like, I mean, we don't use this as gadgets, or this is not about gadgets, this is about using these as tools for certain purposes. So what is the purpose and what is the effect you want to achieve for human learning? Do you want to make humans aware of certain things? Do you want to enable and foster their curiosity? Do you want to help them to structure their experiences according to episodic approaches or episodic memory, or support and trigger their reflection on what they are learning? So, and I think we need to be clear about what is the goal and what kind of technologies we can use for that. And I think an important thing, especially with mobile and ubiquitous technologies, and this still, and I'm coming back to this, is one of my favorite quotes. I think we really often forget about technology, and the more it gets embedded in our daily life, the more we forget about them, but the more drastic the changes might also be they have on our lives, right? So if, and I did this some times ago, if you just do the experiment, when you walk out of the room this evening, imagine, and you could probably try it, just for 2 hours, don't use your smartphone. So, and just look at the effect this will have on yourself, and think about the effects of this. Because, like, simply spoken, like 15 years ago, we didn't have this kind of mobile. We are all very familiar and use it every day and every 10 minutes or every 5 minutes even, right? So, nevertheless, what we have today, and this is a bit related to what I said about the Hattie studies, I think there are some seams and flaws in today's learning support. And some of the issues have been analyzed in the approach for seamless learning by Wong et al. The group in Singapore of Chi Kit Loy and Wong Lung Xiao, they work on these, they define these gaps. Like we have gaps between formal learning and informal learning, between the personalized approach and social learning. So normally it's structured like you read a book alone and then we can personalize everything, but then you go into the group and discuss. But there often are no bridges between those. Also, there are no bridges between learning at different locations. You learn something in school, you go out of school, you cannot link the experiences you have outside the school back to your curriculum in school. So there are these seams, and I'm talking about some approaches how we try to bridge these gaps or seams. One of the things, this was a project called Maze. So basically in the middle of the screen you see a table. On this table we had cards from a card game, and you could throw the cards on the table and they were recognized. And with each card, objects from a database or one object from a database or different databases have been associated. And basically what happens then is if you throw the card there, first of all on the table links between several cards on the table were drawn based on the metadata. So if 3 cards on the table have been representing 3 buildings from the same architect, you could see this relation visualized. But also on the big screens you see in the room, the information has been synchronized. And synchronization is the key here. I think what we need to think about also, for example, for classroom constructions is the synchronization of the different media channels and the synchronization of the different resources in our ecology of resources. Secondly, and this is actually some work from Christian Glan, it basically was a kind of team space, as the name says, where we collected the tweets and the delicious links. No, we haven't used the tweets. We have used the blogs and the delicious things, delicious links shared in our group. And we had different views on this. And I think if we think about multi-device ecologies, we need to think about the different views on the data and be very careful to design these views on the data in the right way, according to what you want to share and what you don't want to share. And this becomes very sensible. I mean, as we all in the last month have become more aware of the privacy issues and how sensible data is, we need to be pretty careful with this, and especially in school contexts, I think. Furthermore, more and more of these technologies get embedded into real-world situations. And we're doing some work in our university with energy consumption and situated displays for learning about energy consumption. And a lot of the things we discuss is like what kind of information is relevant and does help you to learn something in a certain physical environment. So I think with the new technologies we have easy ways to give you any kind of information in any kind of situation, either via your mobile or an embedded screen or embedded speaker systems or whatever. And we need to think about how to channel this information. Right? Okay. And a long-term vision, we're thinking a bit about this is like, I like the idea of kind of real-world mashups. This is related to kind of augmented reality we have, but it's a mix of like embedded displays you have in the environment, your personal display you have with you, probably some more small group social displays that are also in your environment. And I think information and services for learning support will be distributed about these across these devices, and we have to think about how to distribute them in the right way. There we are basically at the topic of orchestration. Okay, so what do we do? I give you some examples and then I will summarize. Basically, we have built a framework with which we use to do a lot of the experiments we run in our studies, but also build prototypes for new approaches. It's called AR Learn. It's open source. You can use it. It has an authoring environment. We have an Android client, and hopefully soon have an iOS client in the App Store. Basically what it does, we started with location-based games, and you could connect all kind of, from multiple choice questions to learning resources to videos to certain locations. We extended this, that we not only can use locations, but we can use time-based triggers, we can use scanning of QR codes or near-field communication tags. So basically you could scan an object and then this is the answer to a question you have in the system. So the author sets up a question like find the next defibrillator. So we're using this for training on cardiac arrest, for example, and you have to run around in your building and find the tag and scan it, and this basically answers your question. So you have to do physical activities to answer a multiple choice question. And we also extended this that you can have different roles, so you have collaborative games, so basically one part of the team has to answer the question by finding the defibrillator, the other part of the team has to run to a dummy and there do some heart massage in the right way, which we measure with a sensor if you do the right timing for the heart massage. And then you can have dependencies between these activities and all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty flexible framework. We're using this also in combination with different displays. This is an example I just mentioned where we did a campus game about energy consumption. Basically, you had to run around the campus and you needed to scan tags, identify objects that consume energy or most energy. You had to identify opportunities where to save energy, these kind of things. And when you did this, you could earn badges. So this was integrated with the badge system based on Mozilla Badges. And then we used a signage system. Basically, when you came into the canteen or into public places, there on a big screen we presented the last badges that certain people or a group has won. So this is kind of combination of like mobile games, cross-context notification, and also embedded displays to convey information to different, like on the personal level or on a group level or on a public level. We also use this for very simple things actually. So one experiment we did was basically just sending a trigger for reflection. So this is a small experiment where we also use Socrative. I think this has been discussed in your, I've seen this at least coming up in the tweets today. So basically what we did, we showed a class this video of Steve Jobs, where he talks about that every morning he steps in front of the mirror and thinks about what to do with this day and the rest of his life. We just showed them the video, but basically the question we sent to the students every evening at 6 o'clock, basically we asked them, what did you learn today and what was the most worthy experience in school? And unfortunately we just did a prototype evaluation of we couldn't measure like an attitude development. I think for that we would need to do this experiment longer, or what we're actually working on. But the idea basically is to use this context or timing specific notification in combination with kind of experience sampling to stimulate and foster reflection in a mobile context. So finally I talk a bit about a current project I'm working on. This is called WeSpot. The basic idea is that in the Netherlands we're now working with several schools, and actually this is an international project. So about 8 countries, European countries, and our work focuses on mobile inquiry-based learning. So we started with a model. We developed a model out of the existing models and literature on inquiry-based learning, which basically means you start with a question or a hypothesis, you operationalize this, you have data collection, you collect evidence and analyze this evidence, you interpret the data, and you communicate the data. You write a report or something. And what we're now doing is basically building an integrated toolkit to support this process in a school, and different forms of inquiry, from a very structured inquiry where the teacher structures the whole process, but also for very open inquiries where basically the students come up with an interesting idea, with a kind of wonder moment. So I wonder why the water is green on this lake. So I just start an inquiry, open up a group, ask a set of friends to join in, and we structure this according to a scientific inquiry. So basically this is one of the mobile tools we're developing there. As a backbone we're using an open source system called ELK, and you can see here in the ELK tabs on the screenshot basically the phases of the inquiry, and in the data collection phase you can use your mobile client to access the inquiry and also to collect data. And this is similar to cases you have seen. We can specify different types of data collection, from putting values to recording videos, taking pictures, recording audios. And the cycle is then all this data gets in a shared data base, and can be used, for example, on a smart board in the classroom. So the process supported by the toolkit basically is, if you start from a teacher-driven inquiry, teacher sets up inquiry, distributes some data collection task. Data is collected from students, from participants. Data is automatically summarized and aggregated in a big screen display, and this can be used for discussion and interpretation and going into the next round of the inquiry cycle. Okay, just one final remark about WeSpot. There's a website called wespot.net. We will soon release the first version of the toolkit to be publicly available, and if you're interested to contribute to that, we're happy to work together with all organizations to support this. So, conclusion. I think there are some seams and gaps between different learning contexts, different locations in which we learn, the time when we learn, and also the social contexts. And I think, and I hope I've shown you some examples how we try to bridge these seams and gaps and use ubiquitous, context-aware and personalized technology how to do this. So I didn't talk about analytics today, but I think the key components are ubiquitous content access. So we should have content access in our considering our ecology of resources, ecology of devices. Sensor data is quite essential as it gives very cheap and easy opportunities to collect lots of data, which was very awkward and complicated before. Adaptation, this is about synchronization. I talked a bit about synchronization. I think this is essential for learning, as you need to synchronize the multiple media channels that learners can use. I think the more experienced learners get, the more freedom they can have, and the more easy they are with using multiple channels that are not so strictly synchronized. But for beginners, it's very essential in a new topic to have very structured media spaces. And I talked a little bit about flexible aggregation of this data and about visualization and flexible output in multiple. So that was basically it. Yeah, thanks.
I hope you heard everyone clap. I think so. Which means that everyone really liked it. But let's just see if there's still some questions. We still have a few minutes. I will now look in the crowd. If you cannot hear them, I will repeat them. Any questions?
No.